Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome again to our 2025 MasterClass series. If you're joining us for the first time, you're going to enjoy the next hour or so. If you're a regular coming back, it's great to have you back. We're here thanks to Profit Master Global Outsourcing, your premium offshoring solution. My name is Paul Jansz, and again, it's great to have you here today. Just a quick one on Profit Master Global Outsourcing. They're a premium offshore solution provider. They're based in the Philippines with offices here in Australia and access to 170,000 qualified individuals. And I think that's massive when you think about the way that people are now moving their teams, their remote teams, their offshore teams. The ability to save up to 50% on employment costs, the ability to have a world-class data framework to protect data. They're all really important aspects. So if that's something you're looking to do with your offshore team or build an offshore team, make sure you chat to the Profit Master guys. Let's get into this educational masterclass, which was built, this whole series was built to help all of you that have joined us with your day-to-day strategic challenges. And each month, I'm lucky enough to present all of you with a brilliant mind on a various topic. And I think our topic today, it's a big one. We're talking about AI Unleashed with cutting edge insights. Today, we're going to look at the general of AI. We're going to look at the technical. We're going to look at the business, and we're going to look at the future more importantly and how all that rolls out. Let me introduce you to my special guest, today's brilliant mind, my masterclass guest, Michael Nuciforo, CEO of Thriday. Mate, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, really good, Paul. Looking forward to this session.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's always great to have you here. It's been a few years since we've spoken about this, and I think last time I spoke to you might have been at the real infancy stages of where Thriday was. So we're looking forward to hearing how that was all put together and where it sits today, because I know you're doing some fantastic things, about to expand overseas. Exciting times.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to sharing all that we've done and obviously how it's really relevant to this topic.
Brilliant. Are you okay to share a little bit about you? So let's go back a little bit, share a little bit about you. And probably what I want to tap into in this little session as well is how your mind works. You know, you obviously see some things that maybe we don't. Certainly I don't. I'll speak for me. I won't speak for everybody else. So I'd love to, for you to share a little bit about you and how your mind works. What do you look for? And certainly with the way that you've been running this company.
Yeah, so I started my career actually in banking and I was managing mobile banking at a few large banks, including ANZ here, and I moved to the UK for a few years. And what was really interesting in that role is that I saw how customers were interacting with their finances, especially small businesses. And it was complex. It was hard for them to get a grasp of their current position and I guess their projected position. And I saw some really cool technology roll out around categorization of transactions, which is really quite prevalent now. But back then it was quite nascent. So this is you log into your mobile banking app and the transactions categorized to a particular category. Um, in 2017, I then went and did a stint in the US where I was VP of product at a large online travel business.
Okay.
And why that was interesting is we actually had a large data science function, and we were using early versions of AI to dynamically generate everything in regards to a flight package. So the list of search results for a trip from Melbourne to Sydney would be dynamically created based on a variety of different inputs and data points. The price, whether we upsold luggage, all of those different things were dynamically generated on the fly using early AI models. And that sort of really intrigued me. And I thought, wow, there's an opportunity here to optimize primarily the user experience for business owners by taking that type of technology and also the categorization that I'd seen in banking and using it to make it really easy for businesses to understand their money. So in 2020, I sort of saw this opportunity. I had seen the frustrations that business owners had, everything from manual bookkeeping to, time-consuming reconciliation. And all of a sudden, I'd sort of seen this combination of things that could perhaps unlock a solution. And that's how Thriday was born. The idea was to use AI to handle banking, accounting, and tax automatically, so that business owners wouldn't have to worry about it. and obviously save them a huge amount of time and money.
Interesting, interesting. See, there's a few things there that already, it's things we take for granted, probably, to be fair, when you look at, the product side and how it all calculates. But let's jump into that. So let's go back. Let's go back a few steps. I know you mentioned your time in the UK and the US as well, back in 2017, and then obviously 2020 to what Thriday is today. Um, are you okay to define what artificial intelligence is for in simplistic terms? What is it?
I think it's really simple. It's just the ability of software to perform a task or tasks that typically require human intelligence, like learning from data. So, in the simple terms, we will calculate things as humans, and make a decision on that, or
Yeah.
recognizing patterns. So, those sort of things that typically a human does, learning, seeing, observing, and making a decision, or recognizing a pattern, and replicating that using software is how I consider AI to be. Unlike traditional software, which is built to run a certain thing or action, AI actually can learn and improve over time. So the more data that's flowing through it, the more intelligent it gets, because it sees and is able to pick up things that it can, recognize patterns. And in that sense, that's how we design Thriday, because what it's doing is it's interpreting transactions, but it's also learning over and over again, both from its own data set, but also in terms of the interaction from the end user, to continue optimizing the output that it produces.
Right.
And this is really important because a lot of things that are taking off from an AI perspective, becoming extremely popular products, are things that used to require a human to eyeball, but no longer do. And it's therefore taking out that time, effort, and cost of interacting with a human. So it's really, really fascinating, and there's so many different products now that are becoming extremely popular in a very short amount of time.
Mm. So tell me, what excites you about the current advancements of AI? It's interesting that you sort of mentioned there with regards to the patterns, and my brain's going into, yes, okay, all the different sort of things we do that's pattern based, let's call it. What excites you about, the current advancements?
First of all, I think it's incredible that most of it is really, really cheap or for free. Like, most of the tools I use, which can create images or recognize, generate outputs like a report,
Yeah.
they're extremely cheap. And I know most of you who may be using ChatGPT or Gemini, you're actually using just a free software that is incredibly powerful. So
Mm.
this is the first thing. Like, it's amazing that we're able to access or tap into this technology at such a low cost. And that's beautiful because it democratizes it. So, there's no difference between you or me or the CEO of Google, in that we can all interact with this software. I think the next thing is that, taking that to the next level, is that from a business context, so thinking about your clients and sort of Thriday's clients, any business can use it. It's not necessarily the domain of large enterprise. So that's amazing too. So the technology that Joe Bloggs, who runs the coffee shop down the road, can use, is the same as the head of product at a large multinational company. So I think that's incredible as well. The other thing that's exciting is just, it's exciting but also scary, is just the speed of innovation. It's
Mm.
actually really hard to keep up.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in this space, that's exciting. Every day you wake up and there's a new technology, there's a new startup that's raised money, there's a new problem that's being solved. So I love that. And I'd also say that for me, generally, AI is being used for some really creative things, and it's opening up people to start thinking in new creative ways as well. So to give you some basic examples,
Mm.
is that some of the old workflows that I had personally were to go and sort of draft a blog, or to go and generate a report and create one myself, or to produce a PowerPoint for a presentation. Now I'm starting to think about how I can use other technology, and I'm actually actively searching for that tech. So, is there something that can generate a PowerPoint for me? Is there something that can generate a blog? And that time-saving component, even just for me, let alone, if my whole business where we have, about 30 staff, I think about that time saving or, efficiency saving is just
Mm,
amazing. Um, Now, on the other hand, some of these things also concern me. I know, for example, that when I was a kid, I used to remember everyone's phone number, my mum, my dad, my best friend. And what I found is when we got a mobile phone, um, I don't, because I naturally had this thing in my pocket where the number was stored. I think a little bit like that in context of AI. I'm already starting to find that in certain activities, I'm getting a bit lazy and I'm not doing them. I'm not memorizing them myself. So I
mm.
think that's really interesting how that's going to play out over the coming years. And I also think that over time, fundamentally, how we operate and how we work and the type of work we do is going to change fundamentally. I don't know what that is yet,
Mm.
but I can already see some patterns emerging that are going to be really fascinating for all of us, and the impact's going to be quite significant.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you sort of listen to the comments about how you're right, sort of getting access to ChatGPT or a Gemini, as you mentioned, is it's free at the moment. And you're right, you look at it and the way that it's brought in efficiencies, whether it's writing an invitation or writing a blog, as you mentioned, or how we can use that, it brings in the ability to write information, invitations, any sort of marketing material, or even a PowerPoint presentation, as you just mentioned. It's pretty instantaneous as well, isn't it? Giving you options, that are just an abundance of information there that all suddenly might take 8 hours, 10 hours of research and coming up and writing and then going and a cup of coffee and coming back and redoing it. It really is amazing when you think about it. And we are getting that free at the moment, which is, again, quite amazing when you sort of say it. It's like, yeah, we would usually pay because that's quite advanced to be able to do all of that in such a short period of time.
Absolutely. I've seen some people show examples online where you know, the, they've asked an AI service to generate a report that would be the level of a Deloitte consultant, that you would be paying thousands of dollars a day to.
Yes.
So I think that's incredible. Now, on the other hand, I think that AI still has many, many, many iterations of changes and improvements and evolution. Some will be backed by regulatory changes. Some of them will be purely around competitive desire to enhance and improve. I would say at this point, in my terms of my personal use, AI can still struggle a little bit with true creativity. So it doesn't have emotional intelligence. It
Okay.
can't make nuanced decisions. And some of you may have read about the challenges that, say, for example, Tesla and those companies have had with some of those fundamental decisions about if you're driving and there's something on the road,
Yes.
do you swerve or do you hit it, and all of those different things. So in that sense, it's interesting that it shows that human decision making is not binary. It's based on a heavy amount of context. It's based on personal experience or personal desires. All of those things are lacking in AI. And on the other hand, some very common sense things, AI is not able to do or understand. A good example is, if you were to ask, if I asked you, Paul, what is the best weather, you
Mm.
would probably say something like, uh, I believe it's, when it's a sunny day, or whatever your personal,
Yep.
view of that is. But if I was to ask AI what is the best weather, it'll struggle. It'll probably come up with a generic answer saying, depending on these factors and all of those things. So I
Okay.
think it's interesting. It'll be really effective for certain things, but ultimately there will still be this element of, bringing human trust, human intuition into your domain, especially I know for this audience that's in accounting and finance, expert judgment is critical. Um, and if you think about in a sporting context, if you think about the great coaches like your Sir Alex Ferguson's, and if
Mm.
you were to read his book, it's not just about X and O's, it's not just about statistics, which in the context of what I'm talking about could be replaced by AI, but it's also about the relationships, the trust,
Yeah.
putting an arm around a player at the right time or scolding them at the right time. And that's really important. And I think in the context of people working in accounting and finance, that's going to continue to remain really important. So whilst AI can do a lot of the number crunching, when it actually comes to being able to provide advice, guidance, and the right support at the right time, that has to be, human led.
Yep, yep. And I think that look, the you sort of mentioned before, and you don't realize how much our lives are now driven by data, I think these big data centers that have been opened up throughout the world. You think about the big data plays at the moment, the big data centers, because it's just huge. It's continuing to grow. So the more data that files into the space, AI becomes more intelligent to a certain degree, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason these tools are for free,
Yeah,
because
correct.
they know that for them to thrive in the long term, they need to be able to get access to all this data. And that's why they're not only giving it for free, but they keep adding more functionality
Mhm.
that you would normally, if you're running a general software as a service type business model, you would be charging people extra for those advanced features. But there's more and more coming for free. And I think when you're using the product, it is important to know that you're educating the product as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it's important to know. I know, for example, now, when I first started using ChatGPT, if I was typing some generic things like, could you help me draft a blog about Thriday? It had very minimal information on Thriday. And a lot of it was hallucinations or was making things up.
Mhm.
Now, if I ask it to write a blog about Thriday, it's extremely detailed. And the reason it's so detailed is both it keeps obviously pulling and retrieving more data from the World Wide Web, but
Yep.
it's also all the inputs or questions or entries that all my staff and myself have made about Thriday. It's actually storing that and using that. So, for example, if we ask ChatGPT to help us write some FAQs about Thriday 3 months ago, that's being stored and it's actually being leveraged now. So if I was to go and ask something about Thriday today, it would actually draw on that information. So that's really important to note in terms of as well for how you run your business. It is important to be a little bit sensitive about what you're putting into these systems because they are actually storing that and saving that. Now, in terms of those types of things, I think that's one of the first things I would say about getting your business prepared to use AI. So using it in a safe and secure way is really important, and training your staff on how to do that. And then also, I would encourage you to think about having different sessions with your team to show off or highlight different tools. Because what I find is when staff start to see other staff leveraging tools for their particular role or particular customers that they're dealing with, it encourages the whole group
Yes.
to adopt. I also think there's sessions which you can run where you can sort of identify common processes that you have today and actually run a workshop with the team to go through potential technologies that could enhance or in some cases even replace that technology. I know within our business, we've had a number of different things that we've been able to replace or enhance just by looking at it, what's in the market. And if you're not looking, obviously you're never going to find these things.
Yep.
And then I also think that you may have an existing set of software or partners, and it's worth considering whether there's new competitors that are leveraging AI, perhaps more so than your existing software or vendor is. And again, to give an example, Thriday has some software that we use to assist with onboarding staff, making sure they've got the right contracts, making sure that it is in place. But it's still the software we were using was still very much reliant on our HR team to coordinate and double check and all of that. Now we've found another software that we believe does that in using AI in a more streamlined and more efficient way. So we've actually moved over to that. So there's massive opportunity if you're just willing to do the research, do a
Yes.
bit of trial, and obviously do it in a secure way where you educate your staff about the right practices as well.
What a great point that is. Yeah. Wow. Mate, what's and you sort of mentioned some of the uh, sort of becoming AI ready and so on, but are there any sort of other legal implications with data privacies and these sorts of things we need to be aware of?
Absolutely. You need to, I think a lot of customers, if they haven't asked already, are wondering how you're using AI as a business. I think it's really important to be transparent about that. Um, and that could be in the form of actually, an email communication to your customers, but also just in terms of your terms and conditions when they're onboarding and things like that.
Yep.
Um, and again, within this field, that's critical because you are handling business commercial information, and that needs to be safeguarded and used in the right way. Now, you don't want to lose out. You don't want to be so scared of AI that you don't leverage it. But you also need to do it in a secure way. I think implementing sort of processes and policies within the business, so extending out in terms of what I just said about training your staff, is actually putting in processes. So, for example, Thriday has a business continuity plan. Thriday has a plan if there's a bug in production. We now have a plan around how we use AI. And it articulates, it's like a 10-page document. It articulates how we use it, how we make sure that it's not going to be misused, and how we ensure that the data that we're putting in into these various tools is secure and safeguarded. All of these tools also have their own different um, you know, their own policies about how they're handling data. For example, some of them will only store data in Australia. Some of them may store data overseas. So these are things that your policy should
Yeah.
articulate. I can't guide you on that. But all I would say, some people perhaps only want that data to be stored in Australia versus other markets where it can be used for nefarious.
Correct.
And then finally, I just think training, train the team and, make sure that you run regular cycles of processes to make sure that people are adhering to these standards and policies you have in place. And I know this might sound like a bit like a joke and it's tongue in cheek, but you could actually leverage a chat GPT or something to help you create these policies and guidelines and to help you set up a training program for your staff.
It's exactly what I was thinking. Why not use the technology to create the system, the process, and the training development? To me, it's a funny thing. You sort of mentioned a lot of the team training. I remember running a masterclass last year, and it was around data protection, data breaches, and the ability to, again, you sort of honed into there in terms of the education of the team and the constant training around the team. So again, things maybe when we're running a business, we don't sometimes think about, because whether it's about AI and continuing to educate our team members, or whether it's around data security breaches, as an example, the ability for even nowadays, I don't think there's a day that goes past where AI is not in the news about something trying to trick someone, and that's sort of usually how it works. We get tricked into something, and suddenly we're giving them access to our data or our server or whatever it may be, our cloud, whatever it may be nowadays. It's an interesting one to continue to just educate, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think with this, it's important that you, as a business owner, invest the time in upskilling yourself so that you can sort of talk from a position of confidence with
Yeah.
your team.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. I think, there's a lot of content online about, best practice in this area. And it just takes a little bit of reading and I guess information gathering to establish your own internal process.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, just in case you're wondering, like a very specific example, I would say, is that you may generate a P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement for your customer. And today, if you wanted to, you could upload that into ChatGPT or some other tool and ask for that to be analyzed, to generate a forecast, to provide a written summary, all of those things. Now, that's great, but it's also important to note then that business data is
Data.
could be in the public domain.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean you don't do that, but there's ways to mitigate those risks. Do you
Yes.
upload the data in an anonymized way? As a very simple example.
Yep.
Or are there specific accounting tools where you know that data is not going to be available in the public domain? It's very locked down, it's very restricted. So you still get the benefit of being able to leverage that type of tech, but without
Yes.
obviously taking the risk of your client's data going out in the public.
Yes. Yeah. So making sure that you've got some protection around that as well. So you understand that while all of this sounds great and can be beneficial to you, what's your, like anything, like I always start with the number one question, well, what's the risk? What's the risk to the business? And maybe that's sometimes come to the top of the strategy for all of this is in what are the elements we need to continually have a look at from a risk point of view?
Yeah, yeah. And I can guarantee your staff, some of your staff are already doing this, but
Well,
they're probably just not
I hope so.
informed. They don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that it's risky. They don't know that it could lead to data being in the public domain. So it's
yeah.
important you get on this right away and start running some sessions with them.
Yeah, well done, well done. Now let's talk from a technical point of view because it's something that I, again, there's just some key words out there that, machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence. What's the key differences between those three as an example, or are there more than those three?
Yeah, so for me, machine learning or ML was actually the first sort of AI that I was leveraging in this travel business. And the best way to describe it is machine learning is sort of a subset of AI where a system learns from data without without explicitly being programmed to do something. So, to give you the context of the travel business I was at, was we were looking at maximizing conversion, which is people purchasing the flight, and then revenue. So people, the right price and the right ancillary. So ancillaries are things like your luggage, whether you get insurance and all those other add-ons.
Yep.
Now, the machine learning in terms of the model was told to have a goal to improve conversion and revenue, but how it did it was not specifically um, designed. It could sort of track its own performance, and then it could actually optimize itself through more data. So what it would do is, to be explicit, was it would see let's say today how many flight bookings were made, what prices were done, what was the conversion rate, what was the revenue, and it would learn from that, and it would go, okay, next time I see some people who look like customers from today, I want to try to implement the same type of pricing and ancillaries, right? Because I know from yesterday that
Yes.
was converting really well and generating revenue. So in very, very simple terms, every day or every in real time, it's constantly learning from the behavior of a customer or a user and is optimizing itself. Now, ML in terms of the theory of it is actually like a subset of AI. So AI is that broader concept I mentioned earlier, where it's sort of software performing a task that typically requires a human to do it. ML is a subset of that, where it's optimizing itself to produce a better outcome or a better output.
Okay.
And then deep learning is almost a subset of ML or machine learning that uses neural networks to process really complex data, such as images, speech. So you're seeing now, which is cool, right? I used to sit down and create videos of like how to use Thriday. Now I can actually upload a video of myself talking, and I can use a tool that will create quite a good video of me, right? And that's being generated automatically. Now, the deep learning component of that, to be explicit, is that it's picking up from a short video that I've uploaded, my image, what I look like, my voice, and then it's learning from that and is then able to um, produce an output as well. So they're sort of the three things in terms of the technical parts.
Okay.
And look, there's other subsets, and there'll be more, but they're the three main ones that new businesses are leveraging.
So is that again just going back to things I hear on the news, I suppose. Maybe I watch too much news. But let's say that the concerns over the AI learning where AI is replicating music at the moment and some of the artists are really worried about that. Is that deep learning?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they are.
And it's a combination of what it's doing and what it's outputting. So
Yeah.
deep learning can then be used in conjunction with machine learning. So what it's doing is, say it's learning my voice and then is able to produce through written commands like me talking.
Yeah.
The machine learning element on top of it is that with some sort of guidance or some sort of goal setting that I have, that it keeps improving the output of my speech, for
Mhm.
example. So I might say I want to set up this system so that when a video that I publish to YouTube, I want to, a good is that there's a lot of views. Okay,
Yes.
so the deep learning bit is I can create the video just with written command, and then the machine learning bit is it's monitoring perhaps the views that I'm getting or the likes that I'm getting on YouTube, and producing high quality videos or videos that result in more views or more likes over time.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And I think there's elements there that there's obviously there's good. It can always be used for good, but you can always think about the brains that are sitting behind that are thinking about how it can be used for bad. And they're the elements we really need to be conscious of, aren't they?
Absolutely, and there's just more and more fraud happening because of a result of these technologies.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, with all of this as well, it's going to be an arms race. So there'll be better technology to protect, and there'll be better technology to defraud, I guess. And yeah, it's going to be fascinating over the next few years.
Absolutely. So what do you think some of the biggest challenges are in terms of the development today?
Oh, just talent is, lack of knowledge. There's just not enough people who understand this space really well. So if you want to get some experts into your business, there's going to be a war for that talent. And I think in many industries, whether it's accounting, whether it's sport, whether it's insurance, whatever it is, it's going to be incredibly challenging to get the right people in your business over the next few years. And they're going to command, for people who do have a lot of experience, they're obviously going to command a hefty salary for that.
Mm,
In terms of more technical things, we are seeing sort of biases in AI models emerging, um, and that's going to be really interesting. So this essentially AI is obviously learning from historical data set, and that can contain biases in it. So if you think about, for example, you know, let's say I'm not political, but let's say in Obama's first term, he was extremely popular. Content online was very favourable for him. If that was the source of the output that you're using to generate, an article or a report on Obama's first term, it might be extremely biased in the sense of being positive, because it may miss things that he did in his second term that were perceived to be negative and things like that. So it's really, the data is at a point in time, and that can throw up some interesting challenges as well. I think also the data privacy and security point I mentioned earlier, because there's so much appetite to use these things that people just jump on a tool and they start using it, and it can very quickly snowball into a place where one of your staff has uploaded something sensitive and it's out in the public domain. So I really encourage, and I have some friends who run other businesses. I really encourage them to get on top of that really quickly.
can imagine. Can imagine. Let's talk about business for a second. I suppose, yeah, look, there's a lot of people online that'll be in the accounting or the financial services industry just online. What are some of the things that you're seeing how AI is currently transforming those industries? I think there's again, you've only got to go to some of the conferences, but what are you seeing in terms of transformation in specific industries?
Oh, look, in finance and accounting, it's quite incredible, and I think Thriday is a really good example of that. So we have been using AI to essentially automate out the bookkeeping element of accounting. So being able to detect through the raw transaction narrative that comes through the bank statement, being able to figure out what that transaction is. So looking at the text, looking at the merchant, looking at codes, and then adding in what I was explaining earlier, the ML part, the machine learning element, is that it's also learning over time. So as more transactions come through the system, or as users edit transactions as well, it's improving the quality of that or the accuracy of it. We're seeing a huge amount in fraud detection. So there's either your bank or existing software startups using it to help detect anything from a fraudulent invoice to an incorrect payment recipient, all of these things you would have seen, for example, if you're a Commonwealth Bank customer, is that when you enter the BSB and account number of a recipient or a person that you want to pay, you'll get prompted to say, this looks accurate, this does not look accurate. And again, that's using some combinations of AI and machine learning and just huge data sets, the deep learning bit. So there's a lot of interesting things there. And I think, fraud detection and also, protecting customer data is going to be one of the big wins out of AI. And then even financial forecasting. So you can take an existing data set. So, for example, if you had a customer that had been with your practice for the last 6 years, obviously you've got the historical records. You can push that into various tools now to then generate a really sophisticated forecast. And that's incredibly powerful in terms of being able to sit down and have a really good conversation with your customer. And it's not a guess. It's not in this scenario, you may be here or you may be there. It's a much richer forecast where you can actually break it down into income and expenses and things like that. And you can even use models where you could say to the model, could you assume with this forecast that there's a seasonal increase over the summer period? All of those different things, right? In other industries, in healthcare, it's improving diagnostics, patient care. So diagnostics in the sense that, you would have seen perhaps a few weeks ago, there was an Australian startup called Harrison.ai. And what they've done is they've got a tool that uses AI to diagnose a wide range of medical conditions. And what it's using is the same underlying approaches that I just mentioned. So getting access to big data sets and then finding patterns and then machine learning. So learning from those data sets and continuing to improve. So to the point where in the future, you get early detection of so many different things, cancers, etc. And then also, even prior to you getting any of these conditions, you'll probably be able to use other data about your body, your physical condition, etc., to forecast the likelihood of you getting those things, right? So that's incredibly amazing. And if you think about, I know we've all had family members that have died of cancer and things like that. That's incredibly exciting. And then in marketing, I know that my wife works in marketing. So they're using AI to optimize campaigns. So again, looking at conversion rates, looking at click-through rates, and basically using AI to say, I want more of the campaign to look more like that, right? Do more of those types of ads. So that you don't need to necessarily go and get a designer or a marketing agency to create every single ad that you put out in the market, but it's using your existing ads, understanding what's working with those ads, and then essentially optimizing those and optimizing, I guess, the customers that it's presenting those ads to. So, look, I think there's so many opportunities. I don't think any single industry won't be untouched by this. Sometimes I actually try to think of an industry that won't be untouched, and I think it's very rare unless it's something that's extremely human. And I actually I got a massage a few weeks ago, and I thought this is probably one thing that's not impacted by AI in the short term anyway.
I saw something ridiculous on, was it earlier this week about, or maybe ridiculous for me, so I'll put a caveat on that. Maybe not ridiculous for others, but AI generated girlfriends or relationships,
Yes.
and I like now I'm still struggling to sort of go what the, but yeah, people married or in a relationship as well, but also having an AI girlfriend.
Yeah, and one for me, and this might creep people out, but I'm going to say it because I want to be
Yeah, we get
honest.
off track here. We get off track.
But I've often thought, like, I was really close with my grandfather, and he passed away when I was young. And like, part of me would be like, it would be amazing that if there was an ability to have a conversation with him. It's probably not possible now because obviously I don't have great footage of him talking or anything. That type of stuff could be really, really cool. For certain people, right? It depends on the relationship they've had and things like that. But you think about that, and wow, that would be amazing to sit down and have a conversation with my grandfather again. You know.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Mate, and I think that's the, um, you mentioned a few different industries there. Are you seeing any sort of practical cases that you can share where it's having a huge impact? That health fund's quite amazing when you think about the data that we're getting from, the cancer institutes right now. That could be massive for the future, couldn't it? But are you seeing any other big impacts on business right now?
Absolutely. So I think in the you take that approach. So just quickly, I'll quickly explain how it works. So with Harrison AI, what they've done is they've been able to access huge data sets of existing patient data, anonymized, I believe, or assume. And what they've done is with human um, support, they're basically recording on those data sets, this person had cancer, this person had that, and using imagery and things like that, they can then say, well, this is what that cancer looked like on the imagery. Okay. So you imagine that, that all these different images, exactly what the cancer was, how maybe perhaps what medicine they were on, all those different things. And you throw it into an AI system, and then all of a sudden at scale, you can see patterns. So
Yeah.
you can see, okay, if this is what a cancer looked like on all these other people. So therefore, if it looks like this, that it's likely to be cancer, as an example. So
Yeah.
think about that sort of pattern matching component of AI, which is one of the more practical use cases of it. And then what I'm seeing, let's use Thriday's example. So we use that same sort of pattern recognition to do the bookkeeping. Okay. Then, in a similar vein, people are using that same sort of pattern recognition to provide customer service. So instead of having a human do a live chat or have a human jump on a call, you can actually feed all that data into a chatbot, feed all those FAQs verbally. That it can sort of do text to speech. A lot of these systems as well, so they can convert those FAQ responses into text, and essentially the system's learning. Now that's a huge one because I know a lot of people struggle to provide, say, for example, 24/7 customer support. It's not
Yeah.
cost effective. It's hard to get staff and it's disappointing for their customers. Their customers want to be able to jump on a call after hours, for example, and answer a question. So
Correct.
you think about that use case. Wow, like it's cheaper, it's more effective, it's 24/7. You can constantly train. I don't need to train, the 20-year-old university student to
Yeah.
answer calls. I can just push that data into a system and it does it. And then I think about even in again using health as an example. So there's a really cool startup that I'm across called Mindset, and they're using AI and other things to help people, lose weight, stop smoking, because what it's doing is it knows the types of either diet or patterns that people who quit smoking adopt, and it's
Yeah.
sort of creating a personalized, tailored program for you, right? And it's learning from your own inputs as well. So, say for example, you say, I didn't smoke for 3 days, but then I lapsed.
Yeah.
It's using that type of feedback loop to optimize the next set of things it tries to get you to do. So it's quite incredible. Again, I hate to use the word incredible, but it's mind blowing actually all the different use cases and practical ways it can be used.
Absolutely. Is there a monetary aspect that you can, or monetary impact probably better, that you can put on it in terms of the future? What this, as it continues to gather momentum, and it's only going to move faster. I know we're going to get to things like, sort of what you think in terms of the future, but the monetary impact, what do you think?
It's almost impossible to put a figure on it. Even Harrison AI, that company I mentioned, the healthcare one, they raised $150 million, and you saw the investment. You would have seen a lot of you would have seen the investment, for example, that Microsoft put into OpenAI. Musk trying to buy OpenAI. You're talking billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's got to be in excess of trillions of dollars of impact, funding, revenue that are going to be attributed to AI. And that's just the actual pure financial aspect of it. If you then think about the time efficiency, which you can't really quantify,
Mm.
but even for myself, the amount of time it used to take me to write a blog
Mm.
might be 4 or 5 hours. Now it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can't put a cost, or it's hard to put a revenue figure on that, but that's again trillions of time saved.
Yeah.
And then you think about, for example, the fraud losses or the customer service examples I just mentioned. Then the savings there. So it's incalculable, to be honest, but it's going to be massive, massive.
Mate, the future. Before we take some questions, and if you've got any questions, we've already had a few come through. So if you've got any questions, please drop them into the Q&A. Do you believe AI will replace human jobs, or do you think it'll create new ones?
It will replace jobs that have a lot of repetitive tasks, that don't require human expertise. But also, absolutely new roles will emerge, and they already are. So, whether you're going to in the future probably hire an AI specialist or a data ethics
Yeah.
officer, or I'm even thinking at some point, at the C-suite in big enterprises, there might be a chief AI officer, for example. So those types of roles will emerge. But I think the key in all of this is upskilling, and making sure that, like I said earlier, the people in your team, rather than getting an AI specialist in, you want to democratize AI across your business. So you want all of your team members to have exposure, be comfortable, to be able to handle and use AI in a safe and secure way for your enterprise or your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And like anything, just put a framework around it so team members are aware of, like anything that we've got now, an IT policy. It'll be a IT AI policy, I suppose, to a certain degree, and make sure you've got the what you can do and what you can't do.
Correct. Yeah.
Mate, the next 5 to 10 years, it's a goal.
Um,
Where are we going to see it? Or is
well,
far
it's moving.
far out?
Yeah. AI is just going to get more powerful, and more powerful in the sense of being more human like. So, some of those examples I mentioned at the start of the call, being able to sort of reason, make decisions with context, um, more conversational. It'll be integrated into everything. So there won't be, now you've got your AI startup or your AI company. It's a little bit like saying, oh, I'm an e-commerce business. It's sort of irrelevant now. Every single business is online, especially if you're in retail. So I think in that sense, it'll just be part and parcel of how we operate. And I think in that sense, you can also draw a lot of parallels from things that happened in the past. So I remember when the internet was first launched, and then I remember when mobile became like one of the more, or the dominant form factors with the release of the iPhone. And I can remember that when the iPhone was released, for example, that every company had to have an iPhone app, within sort of 5 6 year period.
Yeah.
So I think in a similar vein, that's what's going to happen here. Um, and it's important to know, because I do speak to investors, VCs in this startup space, that basically every single startup that they're looking at has an AI component to it. And even at the big end of town, your banks, your Zeros, so Zeros releasing, an AI sort of service, Jax. So everyone's got a finger in the pie. So it's just going to be everywhere. And then I think the regulatory aspect of it's going to be really interesting, and it's already becoming a focus, but it's going to become sort of rubber's going to hit the road over the next few years in terms of the governments putting in place policies and frameworks to make sure that it's used ethically, and it's protecting data. And again, probably a lot of that responsibility is going to go on to the business,
Right.
like today. So you're going to have to make sure that you're set up correctly to adhere to those guidelines.
Yeah. No, well done, mate. I think there's a lot of exciting information, and that's probably what I've taken a lot out of today in terms of how I've been using AI, which really has been at a minimal level, but the ability to use it more and more. And then you're right, from an efficiency point of view, it is brilliant. And I think the more that we get into, and you sort of mentioned things around the marketing side and how we can do that, because I know is it the Google one or Microsoft one? Which one's Notebook? Is it Notebook? Note?
I use Microsoft Notes. Yeah.
Microsoft Notes, because I know even I saw someone send me a file one day where they uploaded some information, and what it created a blog chat. It
Yeah.
created a chat between two people, and it was on a particular subject. And I said, "How did you do that?" All artificial intelligence generated. So can you imagine someone having a 5-minute chat that you've uploaded, which then you can use for digital marketing and branding on your company? Just
Well, this is the thing with cloud technology. So you can imagine there's technology now that can record every single phone call. So let's say you run a call center,
yeah,
store that, convert it, convert it into text or whatever. So you can produce FAQs from customers' actual questions. Then you can produce verbal answers using, speech to voice or whatever those tools are.
yeah,
So that combination of cloud and then which essentially means you can store the data really cost efficiently anywhere.
yes.
And then you can actually use all these different tools to produce the outputs that you want from it. So the cost saving of that alone is just
That
huge.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that alone. Yeah. Now let's go to some questions. Got one here from Leon. Hello, mate. Good to have you online. When you changed from one software platform to another, all enabled, were you able to bring over historical data and retain and build on it?
Yes, so that's actually a good point as well when you're looking at new vendors, is the sort of data retention. Can you download and store data from that system? But yes, so what we were using was essentially a tool to help. Well, there's a variety of tools that we've actually cut over, and I'd also note just quickly is that any tool that you have today, I would literally just search for a version of it that has AI, and I'm sure you'll come across something. And that also shows the pace of innovation in this area. But yeah, we were using a tool for customer service, and a little bit like what we were just talking about. So what we were able to do is export all the sort of content, documents, FAQs that we'd uploaded into this older tool, port it over to a new one, and essentially it was able to train itself on that data within minutes. Like you could start querying, asking questions to, and it would respond. So yeah, that is an important aspect. I think in most cases with software, if you have a proper migration plan, even if the software itself doesn't allow you to just sort of explore things, you can sort of come up with a plan for how to get that data out and into the new tool that you want to use.
Mm. Brilliant. Brilliant. Hope that answered that question for you, Leon. None others coming through at the moment. Mate, any final comments you'd like to leave us with before we wrap up?
No, we're just very fortunate to be living in this time, right? It's super exciting. There's, every sort of few decades, there's a new tech that completely changes things, and this is no doubt one of them. So I guess just make the most of it and think about what you want from it. I know for some people it's a case of, well, now all of a sudden I can do a little bit less, spend a little bit more time with the family. For others, it might be I can get more done, in the same amount of time of work. So it's more about getting more done. So I would just sort of reflect on what you want to get out of using AI, and then sort of apply that to your ways of working.
Yeah, brilliant. And I can only imagine for our kids that are growing up, what they're going to be entering into. It's quite amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Well, mate, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, a great little masterclass um, talking about AI. And I think there's so many questions and answers that, people can take away from this and actually use to their own benefit. So to all of you guys that have joined us today, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the open conversation about a topic that I probably don't know enough of. And we tend to sort of hear how it's been misused, but I think I love hearing all the bits that how it's been used really well and to our advantage, and more importantly, how we as business owners and business leaders can start using that to our advantage. So thanks for joining us. Michael, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate it. It's always great to catch up with great people doing great things in the marketplace. And I wish you all the best with Thriday, that's for sure.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
My pleasure. To all you guys, my next masterclass, we're talking about digital branding. It's on the 17th of March. And, it's a funny thing. I'm going to be bringing in elements now off AI to obviously share with everybody online how you can start to get your digital brand working with elements. So I've got some research to do before our next masterclass as well. But 17th of March, it'll be in your inbox pretty soon, your invitation, 12:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Sorry, not 17th of March. What am I saying? Today is the 18th of March, 17th of April. So there you go. I'm already a day behind, but I should be a month in front. So I'll see you on the 17th of April when Melbourne's back to normal standard time as well. We lose daylight saving on the 6th of April, I think it is. So it's great that we'll be back on normal time zones. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and signing off till I see you next time. Thanks again, Michael.
Thanks, Paul. See you.
See you, mate.